Welcome to another episode of The Marketer's Edge. My name is Mark Snyder. I'm founder and CEO of RSW Agency Search. We're a no-cost way for marketers to find best-in-class agencies of any type or size. You can learn more about us at rswas.com. Today we're talking with Julia MacMullan, the Director of Marketing at Springside Chestnut Hill Academy. SCH Academy is the largest independent school in Philadelphia with over 1,200 students, preschool to high school, 18 months to 18 years. Julia, thanks for joining us today. How have you been?
Hi, Mark. Thanks so much for having me. I've been good. We've
Yeah.
been enjoying our newly installed air conditioning at our house this
Oh,
summer.
nice. Excellent. Excellent. Well, no, it's great having you on board here. I really appreciate you making the time because I know you're busy. So I've got a small handful of questions for you, but before we do that, can you tell me a little bit about SCH Academy and what you do for the institution? I'd like our audience to kind of know a little bit about, what kind of an organization it is and what you specifically do for them.
Sure thing. So thanks again for having me. I appreciate you finding SEH and learning more about what we do. So Springside Chestnut Hill Academy is a product of a school merger between an all-girls school, Springside School, and an all-boys school, Chestnut Hill Academy. And that merger happened between the 2010 to 2011 school year. It was really a reallocation of resources, share of the campus, and an improvement to the overall mission of the school that's primarily focused on entrepreneurship, robotics and engineering, college prep with core liberal arts education, and then utilizing the school's beautiful 62-acre campus. And we kind of lovingly refer to it, at the edge of the Wissahickon Woods, where the city meets the woods, because of where our location is. It's just on the edge of Philadelphia, and we were able to access 10 acres of wooded land.
Oh,
So
that's great.
it's a really beautiful school, and it's made even more beautiful with this merger. And I've been there for 7 years now. So I started in 2017.
Yeah.
And since joining, part of my role in joining the school was to create more cohesion between the brands, right? So a merger always causes a lot of confusion for audiences. And it can even play out in the digital space, where Google was serving us 3 different addresses for a while. So I've been really tasked with creating messaging and strategy, solidified brand, and leading the website redesign, which happened in 2020. And then I manage their social media on a day-to-day basis and digital marketing. And like any other nonprofit organization, we all wear many hats and other duties as assigned, as we like to call them. So I can either be found out any given day taking pictures of events or classroom activities, or directing video production. And then even during COVID, I got the chance to lead an advisory of 10th grade boys. So that was fun.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, you mentioned you've been there for 7 years now. I'm curious what have been some of the biggest changes and challenges you've seen in the industry and experienced at your school, and how have you worked to overcome those?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if many people answer this question this way, but we definitely do in the education space that COVID was our biggest challenge. Obviously, when we had to we were on spring break. They were saying, okay, we're going to come back to school in 2 weeks and see. And, months later, everyone was still inside, right? So I think that was one of the biggest challenges. And thank God we were on the heels of launching our new website. When we were slated to launch in March, the announcement of COVID kind of pushed all of that back. And then we officially launched our new site in 2020. And that was wildly instrumental in getting us off the ground because, as a marketer and getting people to campus is like your big win, right? They come and they see this beautiful school, but when they can't do that, they need to be able to do that online. So The newly launched website was really instrumental, and we timed it really well with we have a program at SEH called the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. And the director and I work really well together. We were trying to figure out how to invite people kind of to a community space where we have these entrepreneurs in our high school showcase the work they've been doing all semester.
Okay.
And we said, well, why don't we just put it all online and we can open it up and have anyone in the world who wants to come on to the site, view the projects, watch the videos that the kids made, and vote on their favorite one. So that was a really great way of kind of because I think people get really excited about their website launches, but the general public doesn't really care as much. So it was a good way of tag teaming our launch and getting people excited about the new website, along with being able to go on and understand our entrepreneurship program. So that was definitely one of the biggest challenges dealing with COVID. And I think, and on the back end of that, I don't see it as much because I'm not a teacher in the classroom. But as I said, I did have an advisory of boys. I mean, the mental health that these kids faced during COVID and still are facing to this day is really tough. Along with, the addiction to screens. Like, we see a lot of this now, and trying to teach best practices of how to, if we're going to all have a cell phone, how do we manage it best? And right now we have a policy in our middle school where they're not allowed watches or smartwatches or cell phones. And then in the upper school, the 9th and 10th grade have like limited access to their phones,
Yeah.
but still giving them, like, it's a tool that we all use, adults use every day. So we have to not restrict it 1,000%, but giving them the access and showing them how to be responsible digital citizens.
Did you have to change the way you marketed the school post-pandemic, change the way you tried to recruit students in? Because I suspect maybe it became a little bit more difficult after the pandemic.
Yes. I mean, we used to have this huge open house where hundreds of people could come on campus and see and look and kind of get a taste of the school. Obviously that shut, and we opened up virtual sessions, and we've actually still been running them. This year we'll see if we're going to still do it, but marketing those sessions was a big deal, right? Like, they were very specific to programs that we run. So, are you interested in entrepreneurship? Come join the director and he'll lead you through a talk with 10 kids and Zoom style while their faces are on camera, and they kind of explain what they do at the school and how the center, prepares them for the world beyond SEH, and athletics program, the arts program. So each one of those specialty or engineering or robotics or sciences, they all had like their own little breakout virtual sessions, which was nice to see. But, you're not getting the hundreds of people. It's more of like an intimate 20-person group. Yeah. So that definitely had to change during COVID.
And speaking of change, I'm curious, how has, you've been there 7 years, how has the curriculum changed over those years? Is the school putting emphasis on things different today than they were when you first started?
Yeah, they are. And I think, honestly, the biggest change has been AI. Okay. I'm sure that's how everyone feels right now, but I think it's this shift in attitude of what was even just a year ago, something that teachers were like, oh man, like, if that kid uses AI one more time to write that paper, to now embracing it fully and saying, we're actually going to use it in the classroom. We're going to teach how to best use AI and how it can improve the workflow and education space. So our school currently uses a program called Flint AI, which is a software specific for teachers and students using AI in the classroom. And a lot of that, is figuring out, as we do as adults, like, how does, ChatGPT or Gemini help us best in a day-to-day work, that it's not doing our work for us, but it's enhancing the work that we're already doing, and kind of teaching the prompts that kids need to know in order to have a conversation with Abraham Lincoln, right? Like you could have a conversation with a person of the historical past in this program to better understand their perspective and
Really
write that
cool.
paper about the Civil War in a different way. So
Right.
I think instead of where we were a year ago feeling really upset and frustrated by AI and the fact that we saw it as kind of like a cheating tool to now using it as an enhancement tool has been really fascinating to
Yeah.
see.
There is that something that you guys sort of came to the did it, came to the conclusion on your own, or are there, it sounds like there are companies out there that tailor to the education industry that brought those resources to you and those ideas and technologies to you?
I will say, I know I'm harping a lot on our Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, but it is one of the things that makes the school the most unique because it is this mindset of an entrepreneur, and that means resilience, right? How do you create, you have an idea of something that you want to do, and how do you get it from soup to nuts off the ground and running as a full business, which some of our kids, like we have 20 or so seniors right now that are running their own businesses, which is very either nonprofit organizations or an app that they're getting off the ground, or, running their own clothing line. So this mentality of, we almost call it failing forward, where you have to learn how you can't just give up when something doesn't work. Like, how do you continue to do it?
Yep.
And the teachers in that space are all professional entrepreneurs, and they've all either run their own businesses or worked in marketing or the digital space. And they were like, we can't walk away from AI. We can't turn our backs to this software. I mean, it's growing so rapidly that we would leave our kids in the dust if we didn't teach them how to use it best. So they were the biggest advocates to getting it going in the classroom. And it did take, as you know, like sometimes in education, things can take a little bit of time because they have to go through a lot of processes and approvals. And it did take about a year and a half for the whole faculty and our head of school to really embrace what they were saying is needed.
Curious, just kind of taking a step back and thinking about the private education industry as a whole. Where do you see it headed in the next 3 to 5 years? What do you see as maybe some of the biggest changes, and how do they potentially impact an organization like yours?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid question. And I look at it from a personal perspective of where the school is headed in 3 to 5 years, and then a holistic perspective of where we see private education in 3 to 5 years. I think personally, the school has done taken a lot of steps, whether that's in the elementary school to redefine how we teach literature and like literacy learning, which has been really interesting to see this past year. They started a program called Wit and Wisdom, where kids who are in first through fourth grade, they will learn about the heart, right? And what the heart does. And they'll read books about courage and being, using your emotional heart, and then going into science class and learning about the anatomy of a heart, and then heading to PE and learning about how the heart works in running around and exercise. So I think the whole purpose of Wit and Wisdom in the elementary school is to kind of understand you're not just teaching words on a page and it's like, see Sally, pet the dog. It's more like, how can you learn about a subject matter and read about it and then write about it and then learn more in depth about it? So it's almost like a full curriculum within that one aspect of, let's get kids to read, but let's get their reading comprehension to be even more complete. And then on top of that, they're this year launching a STEM-based biomedical track where students who are interested in science and the biomedical field can dive deep into being certified. So I think in private education, and especially schools like SCH, I think we have to look more closely at where the world is headed, right? What are the careers that we're preparing these kids for? And it's, while liberal arts are obviously core academics need to be there, there are some of these fields that are coming up that AI is really going to change. And we have to best suit our kids and prepare them for the future of the world around us. So I think in the education space, we do need to take a little bit of a step back. And to be honest, even from a marketing perspective, I've been talking to colleagues about what are the phrases that parents are going to be typing into Google that will get them to what they want, right? So I think we have to think a little bit more philosophically. It's not just like, what is the best private school for my kid, but what is the school that will prepare my child for success in the year 2050? I think that's kind of where we have to be preparing our own marketing strategies around that kind of attitude.
Right. Do you see the industry shrinking any in terms of number of private institutions in the market? I mean, what's happening in terms of, obviously you guys brought two schools together. Are we going to see more of that, do you think, as we look forward?
That's a really good question. I think there will be more of that in terms of smaller schools maybe joining forces with other schools that have a little bit more infrastructure and support for them. Where I think maybe like 5 years ago, we might have assumed it would have been really awesome to see more online schools. That really, personally, I think blew up in everyone's face when COVID happened, and these kids were really drained and really unwell, learning everything they need to know online. I think obviously it works in certain scenarios, but to have a whole school of 1,200 kids learning behind a screen, I think just doesn't make sense. And where I see the private sector the private education really blossoming is letting kids explore those mental health issues, those wellness issues, letting them feel more uncomfortable or more proud in the DIB space, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is huge in the private school industry. And then even so much as like how we feel about sustainability and the world around us. It's a big emphasis at the school I work at because we are so closely connected with nature and the world around us. And we do teach like the ecosystem pretty succinctly, since they get to take, a class in third grade where they have a fish egg and they put it in the stream, and then you kind of like see the life cycle. And if we're polluting the earth, like that's not creating an environment that can foster growth. So I do think that it's hard because the price tag of private education has gone up. I don't think it's affordable for everyone.
Right.
And I do think there is some more opportunities for certain schools to merge or perhaps like become more of a collection. But I do think like the things that we are teaching in the space at SCH is vital for the growth of the world in the future.
That's great. That's awesome. I noticed that your pre-K to 8th grade divisions are single sex and your high school is co-ed. I was just curious, what just are the benefits of that structure? How does that differ from other private institutions in the market? Do you use it, as an advantage that you speak to in the marketing of the school?
Yeah. So when I first started at SCH Academy, I was like, wow, this is awesome. We have one of the most unique educational models in the country because it is single sex. So girls and boys are separate in the pre-K to 8th grades, and then co-ed in high school. I do feel that, walking through classrooms on a daily or weekly basis, you do see the difference. My own daughter went to pre-K there, and it's a sense of empowerment. It's a sense of encouraging our youngest thinkers to really explore the world around them without that gender pressure or expectation that they, should be more artistic or less artistic, or more athletic or less athletic, or into the sciences and math versus, something a little bit more soft skill oriented. I do think there is an advantage to those, that independent thinking. And as you go into middle school, there is more opportunity to find co-ed experiences. So we kind of like to say that lower school is the foundation of that independent thought, and then the middle school is kind of the bridge between the upper school where they are fully co-ed. So the middle schoolers will have electives together, and that kind of starts the co-ed mentality that they are obviously working and learning together in this co-ed environment that they'll eventually meet in upper school.
Do you find that messaging or those benefits that you've articulated are relatively easy to communicate to prospective parents?
It's very tricky to articulate that in a succinct, let's just say in my world, a Google ad, right?
Right, okay.
It's very hard to come up with one phrase that encompasses everything I just said. So it usually is to the benefit of the parents when they come on campus and they can actually see it in action and witness the magic that does happen between these teachers who have been teaching to girls for 20 years or to boys for 35 years.
Right.
They really know how to do what they do best. And a good example of that is we have a visiting musician come to campus every year through our art program, and he joins the girls on their side and then the boys on their side. And the difference in the body language, the questions, the energy, the enthusiasm is just stark. You can only witness it like in person and see these kids and how they react. So it's very difficult to market cold, but once you get a prospective family on campus, it does lend itself to the curiosity of that parent being like, oh, that's an interesting, I haven't even thought of, single sex education for my second grader.
So you mentioned Google Ads. I'm just curious, do you only use any outside agencies? And if so, what do you most often use them for?
Yeah, so I am working right now with a Google consultant. He and I have worked together for 4 years now, and it's been really helpful having that expert in the Google world, because before he started, it was just me, and again, wearing so many hats and doing so many different things, it's hard to really focus your energy on something as big as Google. I also think that it's such a unique thing to market private school education that I was his first client in the sector. So he and I had to teach him a lot about what is the journey and what parents might want to see initially, and what is, being targeted to them through remarketing or geo-tagging or geofencing. So that's been really interesting. And then we also we work really well with a company called Final Site, and they are they've cornered the market on private school marketing. And they help our CRM and CMS for our website and marketing, and they help with our SEO, which is needed obviously in the world today and the digital world that we have as marketers. And then other than that, any OOO we're doing or meta that we might be running is something that I manage. And again, back to working at SEH and living into the post-merger really feeling like that brand has to be strong and the messaging has to be even stronger, and
Yeah.
that we're telling the story in the way that we want to tell it versus having, someone maybe say, oh yeah, that's that school that used to be all boys, or
Right.
that's that school that had all girls for a little bit. So trying to reframe that and get it out in the word of mouth the right way has been one of my biggest challenges.
Yeah. What do you see as the advantages in using sort of outside support for marketing?
Say that question one more time.
Yeah, I'm curious. What do you see as some of the key advantages in using outside resources to support your marketing efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key advantages is that you're getting to work with an expert who um, may not be familiar with your school, but they are familiar with the marketing industry. So they know and see things differently than you might. I think a lot of times we try to, and I'm just speaking from experience with the school itself, we try to take it on internally and kind of say, okay, where do we want to be in the next 3 to 5 years?
Right.
Whereas I feel like having that outside vantage point is so helpful. The perspective that someone else brings can even shed light on something like, it's so interesting that you do single sex. Like, tell us more about that and why do you do it the way you do it? Rather than us just saying, well, we do it this way because we've always done it this way.
Right.
For me, I like to pull back the curtain and take a look to see what others have to say about the school, the way we market, the way the story is being told, rather than saying to ourselves, we want to tell it this way. I think there's huge advantage in working with other agencies that can kind of lift the veil and say, you should be doing it differently, or we could be doing it differently, or have you thought about it this way?
Last question for you. I know almost out of time here. Any advice you'd give to another marketer thinking about bringing a new agency on board?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of things, but I think, is it the right time? Meaning, like, do things feel stable? Do you feel comfortable in where you are in terms of the brand or growth of the company or infrastructure? And obviously considering budget and consensus among the people that you're working with. If everyone's comfortable with this idea of hiring someone else from the outside, I think it's a valuable investment, because, as I said, the perspective that an outsider can bring to an organization that might think they know best, but not always hitting the mark, I think is really valuable. But everyone has to be open to that, right? Like, if you're going to get some sort of critical feedback, then we have to take it and consider it rather than saying, well, that's just their opinion. So I think it's valuable, but it has to feel the right time.
Got it. Got it. Well, it's great. Well, listen, I really appreciate the time you've made today and the insight. You've got a great educational institution. I wish I would have gone there.
Same.
uh,
I'm not a
and
graduate of there, but it's a pretty cool place to go.
yeah, no, it seems really solid, which is awesome. And you guys are, doing things that I'm sure some other institutions are doing, but you seem like you've really got a great program going and thinking about sort of balancing, traditional education philosophy with sort of forward looking and real life learning, which is so important today. So yeah, so it's great. I wish you all the best going forward,
Thank
and
you. Thanks, Mark. I
certainly
appreciate you.
yeah, and certainly thank you for again for making the time today.